Well, buckle up. We have a doozy of a show for you today. This episode is not quite as lighthearted as most of our other episodes, and we tackle some harder issues that are heavily impacting our society today. Sexuality, lust, desiring sin, being tempted by sin, striving against sinful desires. These are some of the topics that affect everyone, whether they realize it or not. And we say some hard things that aren't being talked about in most religious circles. And we address some issues that aren't PC to discuss. We very well may ruffle some feathers with this one, but I sincerely think that we need to speak the truth in love. And please believe that we are coming from a place of love and not of anger or spite. And I trust these three other gentlemen that are gathered for this discussion. And I think they have been blessed with the intellect and understanding and been faithful to steward those gifts so that they have a deep understanding of these subjects. So join us for this meaningful dialogue about some thorny subjects, and I hope you enjoyed as much as I did. Dr. Jared Moore, Terry Gant, Jeff Wright, and myself, Jason Gall, are striving to be men of Issachar. And before we get into everything, I have a quick subject I want to talk about. I was raised on a farm and working in wholesale produce, so I know the value of a good pair of gloves. And I've also been through enough pairs of gloves that I can spot quality when I see it. And I've been impressed by a company known as Bare Knuckles. It's B-E-A-R Knuckles. They're about as tough as their name, and they have more gloves to choose from than I've ever seen in a glove company. Bison leather, cowhide, it's just about any other style or type you can think of. From good old work gloves to rodeo welding gloves, tactical and hunting gloves. They have so many to choose from, it's amazing. So follow the link in our description, and that will help out this podcast. Thanks, and let's get into the conversation. Welcome, everyone, to episode 4 of Men of Issachar podcast. We have a special guest today, Dr. Jared Moore. We're going to discuss his new book, and let's get into it, guys.
Well, if you don't mind if I jump in, I think if anybody's familiar with Dr. Moore's work, you may have heard it said that we've been friends for a long time. This is published under Coram Deo Media, which is something we started with the Pop Culture Coram Deo podcast. I've kind of famously said the first time I saw Jared, I hated him. Met him on a basketball court. I thought I was pretty good. I thought this guy could be better than me. Still not sure what the case was there, but nonetheless, eventually we became fast friends, and I've kind of followed the course of his work pretty closely, not just because he's my friend, but because I think he's one of the more important voices in evangelicalism nowadays, and is dealing with a topic that I think almost all of my adult life has been treated poorly, handled unhelpfully. And so Jared has a kind of singular, helpful voice on this topic as well. So, Jared, the book's 33 Days to Freedom from Lust. You have a preceding book called Lust of the Flesh, dealing with sort of the historic and reformed perspective on the sin of lust and what's healthy. Since we're talking about 33 days, how did this book come to be?
So this book, the source of it is just what I do in counseling with folks.
In your pastoral ministry?
Pastoral ministry, and just encouraging them to think God's thoughts after Him, to show them that sanctification is possible, that you are enabled by the Holy Spirit, if you're a believer, to mortify particular emotions of original sin in your heart, be it lust or any other sin. Now, the flesh in this life does have to move, but it doesn't have to move the same particular direction your whole life.
Let me actually put a pause there, because I think in some ways, if this is a new conversation, maybe people don't understand some of the stuff we're casually referencing. When you're talking about the flesh, you're talking about fallen human nature.
Yeah, fallen human nature,
and it's going to act. Is that when it moves? What you're talking about is your flesh is going to seek some kind of action.
Yeah, Romans 7. Your flesh is going to move in this life. Paul calls it sin repeatedly. And when you get saved, all your sin is imputed to Christ, but what is left in you is still morally culpable sin. And so when you're aware of it, you need to confess it, and you need to rejoice. Let's say that you have an evil impulse for something and you don't act on it. You should rejoice that you didn't act on it, and you should also confess for having wanted to. And a lot of what's going on today is the Pelagian notion that it's only sin if you act on it.
Yeah, so Pelagius, bad guy.
Yeah,
in
bad
churches.
guy. He argued that basically it wasn't evil until you acted on it. And Roman Catholicism teaches that baptism takes original sin away, and then it is only new sin whenever you submit to it. But today, largely, people are not even arguing that Christ takes it away, which is what Rome would say, that through baptism, due to the priestly order, that your original sin is taken away. And thus, when it creates new sin, you have to confess that. And they have a whole sacramental system. Go confess to a priest and do the Mass and
Read the rosary and do the things.
Well, it's like infusing grace into you through the priestly order. But as Christians today, it's been dominant that, they've misunderstood what temptation is. They've misunderstood what morally culpable sin is. And when you start pressing people on this, usually they come to the right conclusions. When you start making it heinous sin that they hate and don't tolerate, I heard one pastor in New York City, 30 seconds later, so he says, homosexuality in your heart's not sin. 30 seconds later, he says he's rebuking hypocrisy in Christians.
Oh, yeah.
And he says if you find it in your heart, it's sin, and you have to get rid of it. You have to repent. And it's pretty wild whenever you hear guys in, almost the same sentence say, well, homosexuality in your heart's not sin, but everything else is. And
So I want to come back to that in just a moment. Terry, who is up until this point been silent so far.
I have been, yeah. I've been taking it all in.
Yeah. He usually starts one of these episodes with a anecdote. And there is a particularly encouraging anecdote about how the physical form of 33 Days to Freedom from Lust came to be. Good-looking hardcover volume we're looking at here. I think you can also get it in paperback. But how did this book physically come to be, Jared?
Yeah, so I just started writing it on a daily basis. It took me 9 months to write, mainly because of the poems in there. But the thought is, how do you get truth into your bones? And it's through repetition. If you have a lust problem, you've got a love for God problem, and a love for your neighbor problem, and a love for yourself problem. And so how do you turn all that on its head? Well, you exalt God and get him as far up there as you can get him where he actually is. He's with us as well, but he came a great distance to save us. And a lot of folks don't really understand that. Jesus is their buddy. And he's our friend, but he's Lord. And, he's the creator of all things. And so I try to magnify, the first 20 days are focusing on who God is and his beauty. And if you're going to expel any sin from your heart, it's through a new affection. You have to have a greater affection for God than you do for your sin.
Who's the Puritan?
I don't know.
The Expulsive
offhand.
Power of a New
Is it
Affection.
Chalmers?
Chalmers comes to my mind. That's a great book. That's kind of the thesis.
Yeah, that's the okay. If Chalmers, that notion of how the power of a new affection, basically the expulsive power of a new affection, that if you have greater affection for God than you do for your sin, particularly lust, then you will hate lust. Like one fella in an interview asked me, well, I noticed you didn't have any practical steps in your, and I said, well, if you're trying to get somebody not to murder, you don't have to give them practical steps to stop loving murder. You tell them to repent and love God and live his ethics.
Is the lack of practicality a comment on your previous book, Lust of the Flesh? Because this seems eminently practical.
Well, he was meaning steps, like get rid of this, bounce your eyes, stuff like that.
Conditionings.
Yeah, and you don't have to do that
Throw
when you love the
obstacles
Lord.
in the way.
Yeah. But the reason why you got to do all that is because your heart still wants lust. The purpose of this book is to get you to the point where you no longer want it.
So you're not trying to throw a router away.
No.
Sorry,
Would
Jerry.
you say that that's something else? I mean, that'd be outside the scope of your book. But if somebody's in a bad spot with this, they would need to, if they would need to accept your recommendation, going through this, working on the things that you suggest. Should they also think about taking practical steps like covenant eyes, or just an accountability relationship, other things that would be an obstacle to? And this isn't specifically porn use, your book,
Right.
but it is about lust, which is, of course, connected. So lust doesn't require a router. But is that something that you'd recommend? If I was to come to you in counseling, would you want to assess those kinds of practical needs in addition to this?
Potentially, but you've got to get to a point where you can live in this world like a normal, like everybody else is. Like if Jesus had a phone and a router, it wouldn't be an issue. And I don't
Right.
think it would be an issue for the apostles or the prophets. And so what's the issue ultimately? It's the heart. It's the fact that, and I think that's what Jesus is getting at in Matthew 5 when he says to look at a woman with lust as adultery. He's telling them, and some of the commentators argue this, that you desire lust because you desire adultery in your heart because you have an adulterous heart. And so the goal is not just to purge lust. The goal is to purge or to expel an adulterous heart, for your heart to change. So how does your heart change? Well, when you get saved, you no longer want to live for the world, you want to live for Christ. And sometimes the Lord immediately takes like habitual sin away. The drunk wakes up and is never desires alcohol again. But in most cases, God gives us the Holy Spirit and the means of grace. So
Means of grace being
the
what, just in
word,
case, yeah. Hearing the
local
word
church,
preached, reading it.
prayer,
Okay.
thinking on the word, singing
The
the
Lord's
word,
table together.
Lord's
yeah.
table, all those things to gradually conform us to the image of Christ as we believe.
So would you say that, lust is a term, and we're here assuming that by this you mean sexual lust, but lust can be applied in a more general way. Do you think that this book could be applied to a number of besetting sins?
Absolutely. Any besetting sin in your heart. And on the final page, I make a suggestion. If you've not seen any headway on your lust in your heart, then maybe you do need to get rid of the internet, your phone, all these things until you get to a point to where you can be strong enough to where you won't be tempted by just having those things.
Well, in my own pastoral ministry, and even really in my own sanctification, if you were trying to help someone break a heroin addiction, you need to get them away from the dealer, right?
Yeah.
You got to quit going to see your heroin dealer, even if he was your best buddy in middle school. And so I do think there's sort of a baby steps grammar issue to doing some of those things, making lifestyle changes. But I don't want to do that in a way that gets in the way of what you're saying, that it's ultimately about your appetites. It's about your affections, the things that you want to love and that captivate your attention, right? That said, I'm going to pause here one more time because I'm trying to get something on the record. I'm specifically asking you for the anecdote about the patron who helped get this book produced, because I think that's encouraging to people.
So I was designing the book cover myself, putting it on Twitter, and people were voting on it. They hated every one of them that I made. And my kids loved it. And I'd be sitting there and be like, man, this is good. And I'd put it on there. And I think the highest I got was like 7%, 200 votes, 7% liked it. And
graphic design's not your wheelhouse.
No, not at all. I thought it was, but no, not even close. So a former homosexual who evidently read my last book and appreciated some of the work I've written, who's walking faithfully with the Lord, volunteered, reached out to a graphic designer who does it for a living, and said he'll pay for it. And so he, not only for this cover, but for the leader guide that goes with the curriculum, he paid for that, he paid for this. So an anonymous, I still don't know who it is, but it's really cool how the Lord works those things out.
Yeah, I just think that is so encouraging because specifically, again, we don't want to reduce this to sexual lust. But part of my problem with evangelicalism in my adult years, particularly for the last decade, is that they treat your sexual appetites as an irremovable feature of your personality. And so there's this idea that it'll never be different. And yet your work, bringing Scripture to bear on the topic, has already produced these stories of men, or whoever it is, saying, actually, I've experienced real meaningful gospel change by just believing that Scripture's credible, it's sufficient, and lo and behold, I've got some meaningful change in my life over it. Right. So just to catch everybody up to this point, everybody in this room knows Jared. How long have you been pastoring?
25 years.
Okay, so started off in Crossville, Saudi Daisy, Houstonville, Kentucky, back to Crossville now. Did a PhD at Southern Seminary in systematics, systematic theology. I remember you initially were talking about doing something on Common Grace. That door didn't open. What led you to this shift? So your PhD was on concupiscence. Could you define concupiscence for us? And then could you tell us, how did that shift happen where you moved into this arena?
Yeah, so I wanted to write on Common Grace, particularly the Noahic covenant and its relation to the atonement. And my
nerd alert.
And my advisor approved every prospectus I submitted, but you have to get 3 professors, and 2 of the other professors, who I will not name, they rejected every one of them. And so for a year, I was trying to get that passed. And they finally told me, look, we'll give you a THM and you can go somewhere else and write this dissertation, or you can change your topic. And I wanted to write a book against the Side B gay Christian movement.
Could you explain that real quick?
Yeah, these are the folks who say that they're gay, but they're celibate, and homosexuality in their heart is not sin.
Would it be accurate to say that they go to some sort of disordered good? So I'm thinking of Sam Alberry, Wesley Hill. So an example listener would be, well, as a man, I desire deep and authentic male friendships. So my same-sex appetite is just a disordering of this good that I want to have male friendships, right? And so there was this idea that it was at its core something good, but it become disordered somewhere along the way. That's sort of the Side B kind of move.
Yeah, it's just empty rhetoric. They're changing the definitions of everything. Even Wesley Hill, supposedly was practicing what he later wrote in his book, and he fell in love with his best friend, and that should have been a scandal. He should have been removed from any form of ministry. Couldn't have been ordained.
Yeah,
but none of that.
It's wild to believe at 2025, but I think Wesley was advocating for lifelong monogamous
covenant friendships that involve things like cuddling on the couch while you watched a movie. Yep.
And lo and behold, that kind of friendship, right, everybody in here just shuddered, that kind of friendship turned into him falling in love with the person. I mean...
Well, put that in a heterosexual context.
Yeah, right.
What a ridiculous thing to claim that you can do.
Exactly. I mean, but that... It sounds so absurd.
Yep.
But that was the dominant thinking on same-sex attraction from 2010
to today.
Well, that all comes out of, and I'm glad you brought up concupiscence, because this is one of the places where I think evangelicals have been really lost in the sauce for a while. Because I can remember growing up hearing, temptation isn't sin. It's only sin if you do it. The devil tempts you. It's all his fault. And so there's a, it could have been slightly more nuanced than that when I heard it, and that's just the takeaway that I had. But that's the issue, I think. They're telling students, young people who aren't mature enough to understand that whatever your desires are in your heart aren't actually sin. And they didn't relate it to necessarily sexual matters. It could be anything. With teenagers, often there probably is sexual matters. But that was the takeaway of well, as long as you don't do it, then you're winning. You're winning against the temptation, you've managed to resist the temptation. And so we were all kind of brought up, at least I was, in this idea that whatever temptations come along aren't really your fault, and you don't have to do anything about them except resist the actual outworking of those things in the world.
Mm-hmm.
And lo and behold, when we all got a computer to put in our pocket.
Sure, and then you go downstream from that, and now you've got these guys saying, well, I am tempted, but the version of resistance is that I don't go all the way.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I don't mean to be crass, but like Wesley Hill's like stop at second base, right? And of course it's a disaster. But I did ask you to define concupiscence. We're talking about it. Could you just tell us what concupiscence is?
Yeah, it's any longing in you against God or against His design, His law. So any evil impulse, it's what's left over of original sin in Christians. And so
we'd call it the old man,
the old man,
the flesh,
and it is sin, and it can only produce sin. That's the thing. Like these guys will argue that homosexuality is a result of the fall, and then the next breath they'll say you need to steward your sexuality, which is telling folks to steward their sin.
Yeah,
which
I remember,
is the opposite of Scripture.
If listeners are familiar with Revoice, there was a conference apparatus that built up around the Side B movement that tried to normalize this stuff. And I remember one of the conference breakout sessions that caught everybody's attention a while back was what products of gay culture will be found in the New Jerusalem. Mm-hmm. This is how intrinsic they think the goodness of the root of their same-sex appetites are, that some product of it is going to find itself in the city that Jesus visibly rules in eternity.
Nate Collins, who's the president of Revoice, actually argued that you might even be gay in heaven. I mean, they think that you can redeem it. What they do is they separate same-sex attraction into same-sex attraction, which is the desire for same-sex friendship, and the desire for same-sex beauty, they say, and same-sex sexual attraction. They argue that the same-sex sexual attraction is sin. And but the same-sex attraction can be redeemed and aimed at good things and holy things. And so when I was in seminary, I had a friend, mutual friend, you know him, who was talking about Wesley Hill, like, go listen to this guy, you know, and he's talking about Washington waiting and how he's gay, but he's waiting on the redemption of his body. And I was listening to him, and I was like, man, there is no way this is right. Like, so it's all empty rhetoric, because Genesis 2, what they're advocating for at the base level is they're looking at men the way that Eve looked at Adam, which is upside down. This is common sense. This is what Christians have always understood on this issue, that from the root of any evil, it's your flesh warring against the spirit. You're warring against the law of God. Oftentimes people ask, well, have I sinned? When they should be asking, have I been obedient? And because if you haven't been obedient from your heart, you've sinned.
Well, I don't know what listeners' background is with this material, but you were talking about Nate Collins. Did his PhD at Southern Baptist
Seminary, yeah.
Theological Seminary. So the flagship Southern Baptist Theological Seminary. This is Nate Collins on Revoice. We're talking about Sam Alberry. We're talking about Wesley Hill. I don't know about Wesley's publication record, but Crossway loves Sam Alberry. If you have an ESV study Bible, that's produced by Crossway. I'm trying to think of the books that people have read. Gentle and Lowly by Ortland, that's Crossway. Like major evangelical publishing houses and institutions. Now, Southern Seminary is not going to sign on to Nate Collins, but I'm not overstating the case that this dominated evangelicalism, this conversation, this angle of Side B thinking dominated evangelicalism. So much so that I have to confess, and I've said this before, but I would listen to these same-sex attracted Christians and they would say, well, I wasn't abused as a child, or I wasn't deeply addicted to porn. I don't know where these appetites came from. And I can remember as your thought was developing on this, I was arguing with you. They can't account for where this came from. They can't be responsible for it. And I know there was a mantra that you gave me that eventually just clicked. It's so deeply biblical. To desire sin is sin. And I just remember like loud conversations where you're like, Jeff, to desire sin is sin. You go to Jesus. To look at a woman with lust in your heart is adulterous. And I was caught up in it in kind of the propaganda wave coming out of evangelicalism for a number of years. And thankfully you were my friend and powered through it. But this stuff was powerfully pushed.
I think, part of the power that came from this is that it seems like Christianity in general has bought hook, line, and sinker the born this way myth.
Yes.
And we even use these terms. Like you would say, he is gay, which is not a good way to describe someone, because that implies that is a part of who they are as a person, rather than a sinful choice that they're making.
Yeah, I think we are very much conditioned creatures, and the choices that we allow further more choices down the road of the same sort. So, I'm not as educated as all the other gentlemen sitting at this table, so I'll break it down in a way that I can explain. For instance, if I see a beautiful woman on the street, I have trained my eyes. I have conditioned my eyes to look away. I don't train my eyes on that woman because I know where my nature will take me if I allow it to go there. So my eyes, out of reflex, look away. And that's what I think we have to do just as a society, is we have to set a threshold or a gate, and we don't go through that. We have to be able to train ourselves to know what is dangerous ground to stand on. And I think our society, we're oblivious to that, or as a whole.
We see sexual appetites as the route to our most authentic self. It's how Stella gets her groove back.
Sure.
It's how whoever, has the awakening on a wild weekend where she sleeps with multiple people, right? Like, we see sexual identity as your most authentic self.
Well, before that even, you don't hear this as much, but the idea that a boy becomes a man after he has sex the first time.
Yeah. Sexuality in general has been cheapened, and it's become something far less important than it truly is. There's so many connections that happen.
It's casual, right?
Yeah, it's casual, and that's the whole problem with it.
It's both casual and the great epiphany that tells you who you really are. Like, we try to do both. Get Tinder or whatever, hook up with whoever you want to, but then you're also going to know yourself best in those appetites, or when you're sexually charged or whatever.
Yeah,
it is a schizophrenic notion.
Yeah, and it's the absurdity is getting even more absurd because you have VR programs coming online that will submerge people into this sin so much further than they are right now.
Yeah, and 2025, we're at the cusp of that. Elon famously has Neuralink. You can have a direct brain interface where, for some subscription service like Netflix, you could spend the day in some direct brain programming, sleeping with the top 25 most attractive women in society at the moment. Like, it'd be a pay package. And all these things are right here available to us in this technological moment we're at, because we've stopped thinking about lust as a path to hell, and have started thinking about it as something that's both ultimately meaningless. You think about Larry Flint, the publisher of Hustler. Jared and I were in New Orleans one time. We walked past a Hustler building, and the tagline on the building was, "Relax, it's just sex." But then also, it's the most meaningful experience you can have. We're going to be able to pump that directly into people's brains because we don't know how to think about this. And evangelicalism, to Terry's point, is not really doing better. It's adopting it and then trying to baptize it, put some guardrails up, but work with the same default assumptions.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So Terry brought up about temptation and understanding temptation, and like we've adopted a lot of taglines like "Temptation isn't sin." Jesus was tempted. Church history.
Oh, that's a great one. I hope you'll unpack that for our listeners in just a moment.
Church history has always understood that there are two forms of temptation. One is when you're offered something evil, inherently evil. It's lawless, it's unlawful. And that is inner temptation. You're desiring something that's forbidden. It's a violation of the 10th commandment. You shall not covet, you shall not desire your neighbor's wife or anything that belongs to your neighbor. And interestingly, in the Hebrew, in Genesis 3:6, whenever Eve desires the tree, the forbidden tree, because it makes her wise, it's the same Hebrew word used in the 10th commandment about coveting. So she is coveting the forbidden tree. So there's not any pre-coveting desire. It's not like you have a neutral desire and then it becomes lust at a later date or a later moment. No, the seed of lust is lust, right? Like it's not good things produce lust or neutral things or God-designed things. It is the lust of the flesh. The flesh is producing the lust. And so James 1 describes this, where he says, God can't tempt you. You're tempting yourself. Your own lusts lure and entice you, and they then conceive mindful sin and then grow into death. That's the life cycle of sin listed there. But the picture is that of a woman giving birth. And so the nature of the death and the sin, the lust is of that same nature. That's why it grows into those things. That's why it can only produce those things. No one can say that I was aimed at good whenever I was lusting. It is sin that is enticing you.
Although, like a Wesley Hill would have said that about his, right? Like,
Yes.
I really wanted a good male friend.
Yes. He tries to say that he's aimed at good whenever he's literally desiring an abomination in his heart. And so inner temptation is always the beginning of sin. Now, when you're lured and enticed by your own desires, you should rejoice if you don't submit to it. But you've got to confess wanting to do it. There's a part of you that wants to do it. That's why you find it tempting. Now, the other form of temptation is what Jesus experienced, which is when you're offered a good thing through an evil means. It's not sin to desire the good thing.
So in Jesus' temptation,
Yes.
when he's offered by Satan or he's enticed by Satan to turn a stone into bread, it's good to eat bread.
It's good to eat
for
bread.
hunger.
The text says he was hungry.
It's good for hunger to be satiated.
Yes.
When he's offered the
designed it.
nations, the whole design was for Jesus to receive the nations.
Yes.
What Satan's offering him is the nations without the cross.
Yes.
So he's offering him something good, not something evil.
Right.
Okay.
He's offering something good through an evil means. But if you accept the evil means and desire the evil means, similar to inner temptation where you're desiring evil, if you desire the evil means, you're desiring evil. And so Jesus, all his temptations, he was offered good things through evil means, and he did not desire the evil means. He desired the good things from his Father. So if I lose my job, and Baptists can vote you out any time. If I lose my job and I need to provide for my family, wanting to provide for my family's a God-designed order. It's according to the Created order. It's a good thing. It's commanded. But if a drug dealer says, "Hey, come sell these drugs for me," if I reject that offer while still desiring to provide for my family, I've been tempted like Jesus. But if I contemplate, well, maybe I could sell them this one time, well, then I've begun to sin in my heart. So Jesus was tempted like us, yet without sin. He was tempted by good things. The devil goes to Jesus with inherently good things. You name some of them: food, angel protection, to be the King of Kings. But he went to the first David with lust, laziness, adultery, lying, murder.
And got him.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And David desired him. So if you desire something inwardly, evil, you're being tempted like David or Peter. If you're being offered a good thing through an evil means, you're being tempted like Jesus. If you don't desire the evil means, you have not sinned. It is possible to be tempted without sinning if it's outward. But inward, you've already begun to sin because your flesh is lusting.
Desiring.
Desiring.
Yeah. Yeah, that's good. So when the Bible's in Hebrews tells us that Jesus was tempted in every way that we are, yet without sin, you're saying that there's still this crucial distinction.
Yes.
That Jesus never had a desire, he never had a desire to lust after a female he saw on the streets of Jerusalem.
Right.
His temptations were things like, this is what the Father's already going to give you. Just go ahead and take it by an independent exercise of your power rather than submission to your Father. Right? That's not us. As sons of Adam, before the gospel, we're tempted for wicked things.
Right. And Jesus can't be tempted by wicked things. If Jesus desired evil, then he violated the 10th commandment, and which is, of course, means he's a sinner.
And would disqualify him as the righteous substitute.
Yes. I mean, he says in the Sermon on the Mount, blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God. He commands us in Matthew 22:37 through 39 that we're to love God with all our hearts, souls, and minds, love our neighbors as ourselves. And if he didn't do that, then he sinned. And so temptation is sin if it's inwardly and you're tempting yourself. If it's outwardly, it's not sin if you don't desire the evil means. I find it very freeing, right? Like to distinguish those two, because the goal is not to get out of sin, right? The goal is, and by that I mean using rhetoric to get out of sin, right? Like
to evade the consequences and the blame. Yeah.
Like to try to, I don't have to go to the mirror to say, well, did I inwardly desire this, or was it outward, or no, I just go to Jesus. He's my advocate. He's at the Father's right hand. He's interceding for me. Like I don't understand why Christians are so adamant about, no, I haven't sinned. When Jesus taught us to pray, he says, confess your debts, forgive us our debts, right? As we forgive those who've trespassed against us. Like it's fundamental. When he teaches you to pray, Jesus knew every time you'd pray, you needed to confess your sins, right? That's how sinful we are. And so we just need to go to Jesus. And all these other things, these empty rhetoric, it constantly sends you to the mirror. Because the Wesley Hills, the side B, and the people who believe, well, I haven't sinned if I haven't acted on it, they're constantly going to the mirror to ask, did I act on it? Did I act on it? When they should be saying, was I obedient to God from my heart?
I think that's a charitable view, because my opinion is that a lot of these guys are really just looking to see how far they can go in disobedience before they get in trouble.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm glad you brought up the Sermon on the Mount, because this came up in Matins here at the school. We did this. We went through a lengthy portion of the Sermon on the Mount. And I read an article, and I cannot remember who it was by. It was on American Reformer, on the Sermon on the Mount kind of being the continuation of Moses' law, where the law that was handed down to us was a list of don't do this, and the Sermon on the Mount and the New Testament that came after it was a clarification of, it's not just about not doing X. It's about desiring to go forward towards holiness and pursue righteousness, which necessarily excludes X. Mm-hmm. And the Sermon on the Mount is Jesus kind of teaching that lesson. And then Paul continues to take that up in his letters, and it just continues throughout the whole New Testament of like, seek righteousness, seek obedience to God, and that will push out any opportunities for sin. Mm-hmm. And that sounds like a kind of the approach that you took here in this book.
That's exactly what it is. And in Matthew 5, the Sermon on the Mount, where Jesus talks about lust, he's quoting the Septuagint, which is the Greek translation of the Hebrew Bible, the Old Testament, and he's combining the 7th and 10th commandments there when he says adultery, to look with lust. He's actually quoting the 10th commandment and saying, so he's correcting the Pharisees who were teaching that only the outward action is sin.
Well, that's odd. So you're saying this isn't the first time?
Yeah, that's right.
Well, back to the kind of cataclysm of evangelical discourse on this. So the idea was the sin's grounded in something good that kind of went astray. Then you find your identity in it. So there's all this gay Christian stuff, right? Mm-hmm. And one of the things that came along with a light bulb that you kind of turned on above my head is that I've called it evangelicalism special sin. So if I had someone come into the church and say, man, I'm a white dude. Every time I walk down the street and I see someone darker than me, I just hate them. And what I want to do is pull my car over and beat the trash out of them. And as a pastoral counselor, if I said, well, so you're a racist Christian, and
he's a side B racist Christian.
Yeah, you're a side K Christian, and so you've probably got a desire that's good for your own people, mm-hmm. And the fact that you didn't act on that is wonderful. But as a racist Christian, you're going to have to live washed and waiting for this special time when the redemption of your body comes. And Jesus will rectify these desires you have in your life. Mm-hmm. We don't treat any sin that way. We don't even treat heterosexual lust for pornography that way. Mm-hmm. So you come in, and I can't quit looking at lust. It's going to cost me my career, my family. I'm consumed by it. Well, look, friend, you're a lustful Christian. And what we've really got to do is just get you to every time you want to look at something on your phone, just don't pick it up. And you're washed and waiting. Someday you'll be redeemed from that. We're scathing from evangelical pulpits about internet porn, rightly so. Mm-hmm. We're scathing about racism from evangelical pulpits, rightly so. But we treat same-sex attraction as evangelical special sin, and we turn them into a martyr class. They're like special. Sam Alberry is this specially holy figure because he desires abominable things. He desires to do abominable things with his brothers and his neighbor. But because he's so holy that he won't act on it, that somehow gives him status, like he's achieved something. And again, it's moral insanity, and you see it as soon as you try to apply it to any other sin.
Mm-hmm. It exposes and lays it bare. And something that's very freeing about this is that, I was in a debate with a guy the other day, and he claims to have spoken all across the U.S. at Christian universities and stuff.
Let's just be specific about this, because I think everybody ought to watch this interview. So it's on your podcast.
Yeah, it's Peter Volk.
All Truth is God's Truth is your podcast. It's a YouTube channel as well, right? Mm-hmm. Peter Volk, who has talked at Baptist Collegiate Ministries,
RUF,
Reform University Fellowship. That's
Crusade,
the PC.
I think he did.
Yeah, Crew.
Lipscomb.
So this guy goes to do
Trevecca.
training on how Christians should think about sexuality. Mm-hmm. So from there, just carry on.
Yeah, he argued that he was a gay Christian and that it's not sin at all. But he was wanting to lay homosexuals taking their lives at the feet of Christians like me that were saying, no, you're not gay. You have a sin pattern that Christ can change, which is what we say about every sin on earth. But that special sin. And so he's running around. He thinks that he's gay. And no wonder, if you travel the country telling everybody you're gay, guess what? You're never going to repent of that sin. I mean, that's just the fact. You're talking about all the time.
Yeah,
you're proud of it.
You're proud of it,
and
thinking
finding
about
your
it.
identity
Well, I
in
can't
it.
remember the quote exactly, but it's something like, it's very difficult to convince a man he's wrong when his income depends on being wrong.
That's exactly right. That's Sam Alberry.
Yeah.
Sam Alberry literally says, I wish I was married. I wish I had kids, but I can't because I have these attractions. I'm like, man, no, if you repent of them and pursue a godly woman, you can get married. You're not a eunuch. Mm-hmm. Like you were able to get married and bear children. You refuse to because you bought into this lie from the culture and your flesh.
And it's very profitable.
The Bible didn't
Sam's
tell
an
you
accomplished
this.
author now.
The Bible didn't tell you this. Your flesh has told you this, and it's ridiculous. It really is utterly ridiculous. But Christians are just not willing to read the scriptures. I mean, Paul in Ephesians 5:3 says that impurity should not even be named among Christians, which impurity is any form of sexual immorality in your heart. Like, that's not even supposed to be named among Christians. And to run around calling yourself a gay Christian, or that, I'm just, I'm a battle porn, all this stuff. Like, I really think the key and why the two great commandments are what they are is that the way that the Lord sanctifies us is that you become what you think on. And you become what you believe, what you talk about all the time, what you think about all the time. And God tells us we're supposed to think of Him and others. And that's what purifies you.
Well, to this point, my family is interested in Stranger Things. The new season has dropped, right? Mm-hmm. So the character who plays Will started playing that character at a very young age. The Duffers have been pretty clear. Yeah, we were building up to him coming out as gay for quite a while, right? Well, I remember before this season dropped, back when the last one wrapped up, the actor who plays Will came out as gay. And my kids were talking to me about that. Millie Bobby Brown, who plays 11, she gave an interview that kind of taught me. And she said, well, of course I knew he was gay. And I told my kids he had been paid in his most formative years, when his personality, his view of the world, everything's developing, to enter into a false identity of a homosexual. Lo and behold, the fake overcame, the authentic, or it shaped the authentic. This shouldn't surprise us. Mm-hmm. We should probably have federal laws against asking children to play homosexual characters. We should probably treat it as child abuse. Mm-hmm. So the point being, it's as relevant as like the last culture-wide television show obsession we're going to have.
Well, since gay marriage has been the law of the land, you've had an uptick of almost, I think it's 300 or 400% of people coming out as gay or trans.
Yeah, because the law is designed to tell you what is good and what is not good,
yes.
What's right and what's wrong.
So it totally upends the lie that you're born this way, which, Gagnon proved that 23 years ago.
Robert Gagnon,
in his book, The Bible and Homosexual Practice, he showed that the percentages of homosexuality were like 700% higher in the cities where it was praised. And those who were educated in the universities were much more likely to be gay than those in rural communities. Whatever your culture celebrates, your children will grow up to celebrate and to love. And it's everywhere in pop culture. You can't, even right now, after all the stats, it used to be like 4%. Now I think it's up to 10% of the population. But when you turn on any TV show, there's going to be a gay or trans character.
And always in a favorable light.
Yep.
They're never the goofball, the screw up, the whatever.
The villain.
Right? The villain.
Yeah. Yep. And it's they're trying to train children. And the only ones who are really standing against it are Bible-believing Christians. And we need to, because society's going to collapse. Lowest marriage rate in recorded American history, lowest birth rate in recorded American history. And homosexuals don't truly get married because they can't become one flesh, according to Genesis 2. And they don't bear children. And so it's just what it's going to end up doing is destroying society, which if you kick against God's design, that's what happens.
An interesting development that we've seen here in the last few years is that there's been a reversal. It's not a 100% reversal, but there has been a significant rise in opposition to gay marriage. I don't know if you've seen those statistics. It's a slight majority are opposed now, whereas that was down to something 30-something%.
I mean, we've lived in the wreckage of it long enough.
Yeah, and I wonder about that. Go ahead.
Just the point that I think, particularly with Zoomers, they've lived in the chaos that a post-Obergefell world gave them. And they're like, actually, probably going back would be better. Yeah. It's like empirical.
Mm-hmm. Well, they bullied everybody. Overnight, I became a bigot for something that Christians have always believed. And
our brothers and sisters in Africa, lots of different places around the globe, still to this day, believe those things.
Well, in my state, I was in Kentucky at the time when it passed, and we had voted as a state to outlaw it.
No, it passed here by constitutional referendum by something like 80% to 20%.
Wow.
And that was in 2008, something like that.
That's why Obergefell had to do it from the federal level.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Tennessee's a hot seat of LGBT.
Yeah, sure.
TQ, Nashville, Knoxville, Johnson City. I mean,
close to Asheville.
Yeah, the further you get from the farm, the less you can live according to natural law, and it doesn't press down on you. Like, Jeff, there's only certain ways you can breed those cows. There's only certain ways you can grow those crops. And the natural law is pressing down on everyone. But whenever you get into the city, their food just magically shows up.
And then disappears when they're done with it, right? Somebody comes in a truck to get it.
And so they live in fairy tale land because they live in the city. And if they lived out here, if everything was still agrarian, if that was the primary job, we wouldn't even be discussing this stuff.
Yeah, probably not. That's not day 33, move to the country.
Yeah. Because, it's just, it's common sense stuff, and you have to be educated out of it, or live in fairy tale land to even argue these things.
Well, we're being indoctrinated by fairy tale land too, with companies like Disney and
Absolutely.
just they have an agenda to promote these ideals. And you just did a thing on X, Jeff, talking about Wicked and Maleficent and all these stories that twist the good to bad and the bad to good, and programming the heroes and the anti-heroes in certain lights. And it's a bad place. I used to love Disney growing up.
Yeah, me too.
Well, they weren't always this bad.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sure that there's been problems for a little while, but we were just, in my econ class, I asked the question, what do you guys think the most complex economic product is? We just got done reading an essay called I, Pencil by Leonard Reed, which everybody should read. It's very short. You can find that online. And it's the life cycle of how a pencil is made. And his point is that it requires very remote, independent human cooperation in order to make the simplest thing we can think of, a pencil. And so I, contra that, I said, what do you guys think the most complex economic product is? And somebody suggested a cruise ship, like a modern cruise ship. So I looked around and found a National Geographic episode on Disney cruise ship, the new one, which I think is out now. But at the time, this was recorded in 2021. And so they're working on it, and there's several parts of it where they show the design behind the scenes, and they're pulling all these older animated bits from Cinderella and Bambi and like the real older classics. And I just, it just really was almost moving how sad it was to see what the company used to be and where they used to focus on like making beautiful stories that were animated well, that told truths. And, where did they lose their way? We're beating up on Disney. They're not the only ones doing that, but that's the one that I think has had the most pronounced and highest altitude downfall, I guess.
They've planted their flag.
Yeah.
You're right. It's postmodernism.
It's postmodernism where there's no absolute truth, and my feelings are my truth, and now it's gotten to the point where my feelings are my truth, but you have to affirm it, and so I think that's why did you say the Zoomers are rebelling against it, because it's it's anti-common sense, like it's anti.
They're tired of the chaos.
Yeah.
Now this is kind of, getting back to your discussion with Peter Valk, is that right? Mm-hmm. I think that he eventually stormed off, which you should tune in for. But the thing that really made it to where he was unwilling to continue was where you declined to take responsibility for the horrific suicide rates among LGBT people, where he wants the church to accept at least a large portion of the blame for that phenomenon. And I can't help but think that a lot of the programming we're seeing is a desperate attempt by people who are so lost and feel horrible about the lifestyle that they have. And they think if they could just convince everybody that it's good, that they would feel better.
Yes. It's a gospel. It's a false gospel.
And, this Men of Issachar podcast, you got to realize this is the kind of final rhetorical manipulation. You see it most pronounced with trans kids. Either let your kids mutilate themselves and sterilize themselves, or they're going to kill themselves. Let people desire abomination and pursue that, or they're going to kill themselves. And this is particularly aimed at parents. You get a little bit with educators. You get a little bit with it with like educational apparatus stuff. The people under your authority are going to kill themselves if you're not on board with this. But it's really aimed at parents. If you don't let them find their identity in their sexual appetites, no matter how bizarre. We're past furries, like whatever it is, they're going to kill themselves. And so every parent who wants their child alive feels incredible pressure to say, well, yeah, I guess I would rather them be alive than dead. And that's why Valk wants to lay that on your shoulders, because that's when, if you accept responsibility for those things, well, now you just have to do what they want. You just have to let them have a blank check.
It's a hostage situation.
Yeah, it's a hostage situation.
Yeah, voluntarily taking your own life, and you want to blame somebody else. Whenever you're literally pursuing an idol, you're saying, I must be gay or else. I must have this sin or else, and you must approve it or else. Or else I'm going. And it's not a hatred of self. It's a it's a selfish, like it's a pursuing what you want above loving God, above loving your neighbor. I mean, it's like the
Any other
peak of
natural
it.
obligation, right?
And
I will have life on my own terms,
Yes.
or not at all.
or not at all. That's exactly right. And the way out of it is exactly what argued in this book. It's the way out of all sin. Love God, love your neighbor. I mean, it really is that simple. Live your life for loving God and loving your neighbor, and you'll flourish. And if you don't, you won't. That's just a fact.
Yeah, so Jared, just to play devil's advocate, because I know this comes up, you're not advocating that sinless perfectionism can be attained in this life.
No, the flesh is sin, and it's with you in this life, and it will move, and that's sin. But you don't ever have to walk in the flesh. You don't ever have to submit to it. And if you starve it and call it sin, it will starve itself to no effect and move a different direction. The reason why you battle the same sin over and over again is because you are tempted by it. There's a part of you that wants it. And at the point when you no longer want that particular sin, it will move to something else. You can mortify particular motions of original sin. And it's biblical. It's Colossians 3, it's Romans 8. I mean, Paul's never talking about his sexuality. None of the New Testament writers. And how many Christians today, that's what they're talking about constantly, what they're coming and battling constantly. Well, why? Well, because they gave their hearts to it at some point.
They've given it permission.
Yes, they have. And
That's the way the spiritual realm works. It's when you grant permission to a spirit of something, you give it legal access to that.
Like the vampire being asked into the house, right?
Right.
You know, these things, particularly with Christians, can't force the door, right? Like if you open the door, and we do. I mean, there's a reason why the vampire myth is they can't come in unless you invite them. There's a reason why the fictional stories of demons are like you do something to summon it to you. And then it has access, and now you know in the movie or story,
Play
or
with the
whatever,
Ouija
you've
board,
gotta-
ask for knowledge
You've
of
got
the
to figure
future.
out the way to get the door closed again. But there's a kernel of truth there that we give specific sins permission to linger, and we have to slam the door shut.
It's Psalm 115 and Romans 1. You know, in Psalm 115, they worship idols and then they become like them. Mm-hmm. And in Romans 1, they worship the creature. And then because they've turned worship upside down, they're not worshiping the Creator, they're worshiping the creature. Now their sexuality is upside down. And then they dive into all manner of sin. Mm-hmm. And so it's reciprocal. So if you give in to a sin, then you become like that sin, right? Like if you submit to it, as Jason was talking about, then you literally become more like it, and it slowly dehumanizes you or de-images you because you're imaging Satan.
Yeah, and we've seen this with, I mean, you know, in the 80s, homosexuality went through a major image upgrade, right? Because they were known back then as being kind of this gross party crowd that was doing unmentionable things. And they were fine with that. But they realized if we ever want acceptance, if we ever want to be able to do this without having to worry about getting arrested and stuff, we're going to have to change things. So that's when they came up with the love is love kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. But that what actually goes on didn't change. It was just a veneer. And we've seen that now that it's out in the open. Now people can actually watch the degrading where someone goes from just sort of gay to like a lunatic trans, like it gets extremely warped and it's just visible. Like you can just see it in the countenance of people.
Man in his late 20s has to wear adult diapers.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Like, I mean, it's degrading.
I mean, literal castration.
Yeah.
And dressing like an animal, acting like an animal.
Yeah.
It's to the point of...
There's been a major effort to curtail footage from the San Francisco Pride Parade on social media and other places. Several years ago, there was a video of a man urinating in another man's mouth during the parade.
Oh, my goodness.
And once that happened and went viral, we've got to get that stuff off the airwaves because it undercuts the veneer that Terry's talking about. We're just like y'all. It's just same sex rather than heterosexual. You watch guys in dog collars abusing each other on the street. Mm-hmm. makes that look real false.
So our TV homosexuals are clean cut. They look like you. They don't talk with a lisp.
Have a great wit.
Yeah, they
Kind of Oscar Wilde.
Yeah.
Very funny.
yeah, and that's the presentation that they prefer. But when you actually see the real thing, which I hope you don't, you know that it's not what they want to present. It's not the public image they want you to see.
Yeah, and even the campaign's been successful enough that I do think that they're kind of in a position of not realizing how much they're saying. Mm-hmm. So if you look at and I realize there's differences between same-sex individual and drag queen, although there's a lot of overlap. But the drag queens probably works. The drag queens who are doing Drag Queen Story Hour look like cartoon monsters.
They do.
There's something about that movement that wants to grind your face in the obscenity of it. Mm-hmm. And I do wonder if Drag Queen Story Hour wasn't a place of them overplaying their hand.
Yeah, it seems to have not gone as well long term.
Something that so Rosario Butterfield speaks at her local school board, trying to persuade them to not allow these trans.
And if people don't know
items
her,
in.
so she was a lesbian literature professor at
Syracuse,
tenured, eventually was radically converted, now is a pastor's wife, and tries to help people in her former circumstances.
So she said at those school board meetings, people who oppose her, it's amazing how many young people are walking with canes, because whenever you put those chemicals into your body, like the opposite of what you're designed for, it destroys your bones. And so many people who are trans walking around with canes, young people, because their bodies are being destroyed by literally what they are doing, the fairy tale they're trying to live. And you don't ever see that. You don't ever see those warnings.
Look how free they are.
Yeah.
So I think we're probably running up against time here. Jared, so 33 Days to Freedom from Lust. I'll just say for the record, I think John Owen's Mortification of Sin is maybe the most practical, best thing written in the church on dealing with sin. I'm going to put this as number 2, and I'm not doing that because I'm your buddy. I just really believe in this book. What's the cheapest purchase price for a book like this?
Yeah, you can buy it on Amazon. If you want bulk prices, find me on Twitter or find me at drjaredmoore.com. And I can get you bulk prices at cheaper prices. And I've got a curriculum that goes with it where you can teach this in your church, your small group, your men's ministry, Sunday school, where you can just walk them through everything that we've talked about, but it'll be at a very, G-rated level to where folks, even teenagers, your youth group, this book has been designed for even a 10-year-old fifth grader to read. And so I hope it helps everyone. I especially want it to get to young people so that they can, right before they hit puberty, and those desires for marriage are beginning, to help shape them in such a way to where the flesh isn't twisting God's good design. And so I want to encourage you to go purchase it. And you can also read it on Kindle, and there's paperback, hardcover. But
listener, I'm gonna go further. You do need to contact Jared for bulk pricing, because there should be at least 10 copies of this on every church foyer in America, just laying around for people to pick up, because these kind of sins they often don't manifest themselves publicly early on. And so these kind of books need to just be in circulation in your church, so the person who thinks they're hiding this sin encounters it and finds freedom from it, and then brings the resources of the church to bear on it as well. So please listen to me. I'm not making a commission off of this. 10 copies of this should be on your church's, whatever table's in the foyer by the time that, the soonest you can make that happen. Thanks for being here, Jared. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me, fellas.
Yeah, thank you. We'll get back to it again very soon, but thank you guys for joining the Men of Issachar. Well, I hope you enjoyed this podcast. Like and subscribe. And we're going to leave you with another song from my good friend Marcus Hill, Holding Up Fences.
From the look look on your face that you'd walk out the door and you drive away. You packed your bags and I watched you leave. Now I miss you so much it hurts, and I can hardly breathe. Your mama thinks I'm crazy, 'cause I stop and stare, look out over the fields like you're standing there. Little does she know, my faith is like a stone. I'll be holding this fence up till the day you come back home. Every morning I wake just to dream you're around, but I hear you've been busy painting up this town, outliving the life, oh sweet child of mine. And every evening I pray God protects you and keeps you alive. Your mama thinks I'm crazy, 'cause I stop and stare, look out over the fields like you're standing there. Little does she know, my faith is like a stone. I'll be holding this fence up till the day you come back home. Hey there, child, my grace has no end, and I will come running when I see you come round that bend. Your mama thinks I'm crazy, 'cause I stop and stare, look out over the fields like you're standing there. Little does she know, my faith is like a stone. I'll be holding this fence up till the day you come back home. I'll be holding this fence up till the day you come back